Recently, Sag Harbor organized having experts from the National Trust for Historic Preservation's Main Street program present their ideas.
In March, they do a chocolate festival, the day-long baking cook-off. In April, they have something called Spring Weekend. In May, they do, again, Restaurant Week. They do seaside holidays, horse and buggies, take people shopping, hospitality. Now, you may do a lot of these things yourself, but you see, they're trying to keep the calendar going.
Yes, we don't want to be beholden. I owned the house in Rehoboth that was owned by grandparents for years. Rehoboth has become sort of an Atlantic city. Once upon a time, it was a very nice, it was a Methodist village. It was a very nice, quiet place with the trains going down the center. Today, it's Atlantic City. It's vulgar. It's ugly. We don't want it.
Bath, Maine is a Main Street community. Bath had, by far, the best downtown merchants association I've ever seen. This was before they ever got a Main Street program. They kept Walmart out of the community. They did some phenomenal things. They have a real downtown. It serves the locals in the off season. They get a lot of traffic down. We're a village in such as what you have. Actually, Bath's Main Street is, I think, shorter than yours, and it is a city in Maine has a population of maybe what 5,000 people or something like that. I mean, the whole state probably has what 1 million people.
How do you take the big box stores out? How do you take that out?
You have to get organized.
You keep your small businesses and your independent businesses vital.
Yeah.
And big business. Give
Yeah.
them other things. Yeah. How do you keep the big box?
Right. Well, there are a couple of different ways that you have to go about it. Certainly, regulation law is one thing. You want a really organized, unified voice that has access to technical assistance to guide it through the process of really advocating strongly and publicly. And you absolutely have to keep the businesses that are here and strong and patronized, and that truly is the way to do it. And year-round. I mean, that is true.
If I could just throw out one question, we also care immensely about some of our historic churches in this community, and have unfortunately had one of our churches turned into a private residence. I know that some of the work of the National Trust, and maybe one or two comments on that, or to direct us to where on your website could help us with that issue.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a major issue all across the country, and there are a couple of really important ways or places to look. One is our website. We do have, under issues on our website, there's a banner at the top. One of them is issues, and you'll see houses of worship is one of the issues. In there's a book of case studies for sort of appropriate reuse of churches when they need to be reused. And then also the other resource that I would point you to is an organization that's a national organization called Partners for Sacred Places. That is out of Philadelphia, and they do a really extraordinary job, and we work with them all the time, of bringing together congregations to do workshops on fundraising. They have a proprietary system for helping congregations really evaluate, literally put a dollar value on what it is that they put back into the community through giving people community space, things like that, so that they can fundraise in a much wider scope than merely in the congregation themselves. They shouldn't have to be in it alone, really, because they do give us all so much, far beyond their own mission.
You've heard a lot tonight. I think there are wildly divergent communities here. There's a business community that is frequently at odds with each other. There's a residential community that is frequently diametrically opposed to the business community. One of the questions that I have here is, I wonder, what is it that you folks can bring to the table in order to help build consensus? We realize that there are different economies. There are different things that are driving the issues here. Some things that we can't control. Ownership issues over buildings and properties.
Right.
Rent control is a huge issue. What is it that you folks can bring to the table to help us try to move forward and gain consensus?
But somehow elevating to the status of an issue that we all have to sit around the table and have all the stakeholders there. It's no, somebody pulling toward one interest or another. Let's all figure out how to keep our downtown viable, vibrant, full of life. And this is not about revitalization, but maybe here it's sort of ultra-vitalization. And I don't mean by that having it be a zoo, but let's figure out what it means to have success in the downtown together, all together, and then work toward that. I think it really kind of brings everybody out of the fray.
Just one last follow-up. Is it all about the business community, or is it about the community at large and how the two relate and create a healthy symbiotic relationship?
It is a symbiotic relationship, and on that I'd like to thank, let's give us a big hand. That was very wonderful. On behalf of the board of Sag Harbor, I want to thank you both, and please join us outside.
Nancy, you have pretty deep roots in Sag Harbor.
I have very deep roots in Sag Harbor. I went to school here, 3rd and 4th grade. As I comically said to most friends, I did the 3 schools that were here, having graduated in 1960 from the Academy of the Sacred Heart of Mary. My great-grandfather was Hannibal French, and the house remains on Sag Harbor, fortunately in very good hands. And I retired back here about 4 years ago, having been here over the years, and have seen the change, and at times were horrified, and yet I arrived here as a full-time resident 4 years ago, and I am so happy to be here. It is a wonderful, wonderful village. I bring people to here from Warrenton, from Alexandria, from Washington, whereas, I've lived in Alexandria, and they come into the village and they say, wow, this is a jewel. This is a jewel. So,
What makes it special? What makes it a jewel?
the jewel is the architecture. The jewel is it has not been spoiled. It basically looks very much like it looked when I was a teenager. Yes, the stores have changed. Barry's hardware store and is now, Sag Harbor hardware store on Main Street. But the across the street store is the same facade, and his wife had the Yards Good stores, and now the daughter-in-law has the Wharf Shop. It is a wonderful village that has not, I do not think, changed physically that much. We need to preserve it. We need to do the smartest things we can do. So I think we're a village. We have diverse interests, business people, residents, old-time people. Everybody has an opinion. I think we need something cohesive to bring us together with some umbrella that says, I have this education, listen to it or not, but I can help you with this.
Are you hopeful that Sag Harbor can be saved? You lived elsewhere through your life, and you've seen...
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, no, absolutely, yes. I mean, I think there are too many people there. Yes, I do think it can be saved. I do think that there is some way that we're missing out on touching the people who are second and third homeowners who are here, and that I do not know how to challenge. I am not in advertising, I am not in communication, but they need to know more about it, because a lot of these people have bought $3 million, $4 million, $7 million houses, and they've invested a lot of money. And they need to know the pulse of this village that they fell in love with. I think the village that they fell in love with. Maybe they live in North Haven, maybe they live up on Sag Road. I don't know where they live. I'm in real estate, so I kind of know where they live, but I think that's something that's missing here. They need to be more educated, as well as all of us who call ourselves people from Sag Harbor.
Dave Lee, Director Emeritus of the Sag Harbor Chamber of Commerce. You've been in Sag Harbor for a long time, 60 years, since
60 years.
1948.
Right.
What do you feel about the rumored changes to occur in Sag Harbor?
A lot of them are actually rumors. I manage some real estate, and as far as I've been hearing on the street, I've sold half of it. I don't own it, but I've heard that I sold half of it. These are rumors that go around this village from morning till night. I just heard again that I put the pizza parlor out of business. They've got a lease that goes for another 15 months. If I wanted to put them out of business, I couldn't.
This is a
rife with rumors for which there's no basis.
Dave Lee, this is a quaint little town, Sag Harbor. You've been here for 60 years. What do you think about the prospect of it changing, looking like so many other American communities?
It's a problem to stop it looking like East Hampton, because people with large amounts of money come in and buy the properties, and they can do whatever they want. I had a jewelry store here for 20 years. I was gentrified out of business. The rent doubled. I couldn't afford it. I went out of business. I couldn't sell my business because nobody else could afford the rent.
Can Sag Harbor survive the way it's been for centuries, in fact?
In spite of itself, Sag Harbor does survive. We've been here since 1707, and it's still the most successful village on the East End. It's if you come through here at night, there's life. There's all kinds of life. You go through any of the other villages around here, and they're locked up at 5 o'clock. We've got life going on here.
Are you concerned about the real estate moves? Well, it looks like Sag Harbor is on the cusp of some major changes.
Unfortunately, there's no way you can stop someone from buying a building. They're trying to put some zoning changes together, but I don't think they'll work. They are actually opposed to many things. If the pizza parlor, for instance, should go out of business, the new rules they're talking about imposing upon us mean that I have to find another pizza parlor to go in that space. If the powers that be, the village board, decide that we need a pizza parlor, I've got to find a pizza parlor, or else the place remains empty. If I want to join the two businesses together, where Sylvester's and the pizza parlor are together, somebody wants to buy the whole building or wants to rent the whole building, I can't do it without going to another village board to get help and get permission to do it.
Are you optimistic or pessimistic about what Sag Harbor will...
I am optimistic about Sag Harbor. I've been here through good times and bad, and we always made it through. It's a lively town. It's a hometown. The others aren't hometowns, and I think that's what keeps this place going. Some go down and the others come up, but we've got the only 5 and 10 in captivity here. It's owned. Luckily, the building is owned by the people who run the business. I am a landlord's agent for some businesses, and they will remain stable. We have no intention of selling them, no matter what price is offered. I've turned down some ridiculous offers for some of this property. The owners don't want to sell. And whenever we have some people that want to keep the business in Sag Harbor, we will continue to stay. I'm very optimistic. I'm a cockeyed optimist from England.
I have roots that go way back in Sag Harbor. My grandfather came here over a century ago from Hungary to work in this watch case factory, the Fahey watch case factory. It's boarded up now. Who knows what'll happen to it. My grandfather was a Hungarian Jew. In fact, Fahey would bring Hungarian Jewish engravers right from Ellis Island out by steamship to work here in his factory. Jews, African Americans who have long lived in Sag Harbor, Italians and other ethnic groups have long led to a very special mix of people in Sag Harbor.
Les, where you work and you live in Sag Harbor, how do you feel about the changes that seem to be heading this way?
Well, the bad thing is, you come to a town and you settle in a town because you like what's there. You don't come for what it could change into. And when I saw Sag Harbor, I'm only from Southampton, and I've been here a dozen years, but when I saw it as a kid, I thought it was very special because unlike some of the other places, you were right there with the water, and I thought it was just about perfect.
What do you think would take to save it?
I think it'll take a lot of people deciding that they feel like I do, that it's worth saving, that it's special and unique, and it's worth the extra effort to go out and do what it takes to keep it.
Can even a lot of people, however, stop the economic pressures? I mean, the almighty buck is very powerful.
Well, the almighty buck is very powerful. But if the local people continue to support the local merchants and continue to support the local businesses and continue to tell the elected officials what they want, they can do a lot. They can pretty much shut down a lot of that development.
Ted Conklin, you're the owner of the American Hotel, an historic hotel in a historic community, Sag Harbor.
Thank you.
What do you think about what seems to be coming down on Sag Harbor, what Sag Harbor appears to be facing?
I have a contrarian opinion, and that is that Sag Harbor is doing just fine. Thank you very much. We're a particularly unique village because we have been allowed to evolve without constriction, and whatever dysfunctionality there may seem to be, the result is that we have an extremely unique and resilient Main Street. I overheard you asking Dave Lee a bit ago that, can Sag Harbor survive or continue the way it was for, 150 years ago, it was a whaling village. Of course it's going to change. You can't prevent change. And it's a question of what kind of change you want. And what I think is happening now is that there's a tendency to get very litigious and sort of over-organized, and to try to preserve or even cryovac the kind of success that people see on the Main Street. We have many struggling retail businesses because the retail environment is very unhealthy. And it's because most of our community members have legal addresses in Florida for very, typical reasons. For many of our, I would not be surprised if 30% of the people in the village of Sag Harbor actually are non-nationals. People don't live here. So how you can keep certain of these businesses going is a problem. We'd love to keep it exactly the way it is, but I'm not sure how to do it. The first thing that I think should happen is that people should ask the merchants of the village how they're doing, and people haven't asked us that. I'm a bit disappointed in it, and we also have a very unusual, sometimes very, always very contentious, but very sort of happy, interesting relationship with the village government, which is, let's say, it's a very competitive kind of situation that most of us who've been here for a while can deal with. Somebody had sort of pinched me and asked me to talk about taxes. Former mayor of the village of Sag Harbor and current trustee, who was the Southampton town tax assessor, elected this year to reassess all the commercial properties in Southampton town at triple their historical rate. This puts people in perhaps the population likes this idea because, well, the landlords will pay it. In fact, landlords always pass these costs along to the tenants in terms of triple net leases. It's not like it was 50 or 100 years ago. So essentially, this is an example of government destroying or eroding the potential to sustain the exact sort of business that all of us want to preserve. And it's a shameful kind of situation. And we don't deal with it intellectually. We deal with it very emotionally. And particularly, I mean, I don't mean to be condescending to the... There are a number of people who approach social situations without proper recognition of or understanding of civics. If you don't live in a place and are unable to vote in a village, for instance, you're imposing on those people to tell them what they should do. And in the village of Sag Harbor, we have 1 square mile, including water. There are 2,500 people here. And those 2,500 people turn out very politically active people. I don't think there's a place on the planet that's more politically active than Sag Harbor. And our average vote in the last, let's say, 5 or 10 elections might be, the average might be 125 people. No one lives here. And that's a breakdown of democracy. It's not anybody's fault. I take no pleasure in criticizing anyone. I don't really criticize anyone's intent, but the politics is broken. And, we have a hard time dealing with it.
The American Hotel is an antique. You took it over in the early 70s. For decades it had just sat there, very much like Sag Harbor, sitting there from the time the whaling industry got into a decline because of oil and so forth, and just left Sag Harbor.
Just hope the wine business doesn't go into decline.
Well, Sag Harbor was kind of a place thrown into a time capsule for almost a century, and then you were part of movement to bring it back. Now, 40 years later.
Well, I was a movement of one to survive for myself. I mean, I had a family. I was trying to make a living. And that's, I think, what's distinguished about the village of Sag Harbor. If you go up and down the street, you have people who are simply trying to make a living. They're not trying to pay for the franchise they bought at the Javits Center 10 years ago. These are families that live here. And what's unusual about the village of Sag Harbor is that there are 10 or 15 buildings that are owned by, they're almost legacies. There are buildings like the Variety Store, where the family bought the building in 1969, 40, 50 years ago, or the IGA. And the families own the building. They're the landlords. They operate the businesses very, very well. And they enjoy being here. But in the last analysis, none of us work our businesses to make a profit. We sustain our lifestyles with the intent of enjoying the appreciation of the real estate. And that's something very hard for outsiders to understand. This is a wonderful place to live, and the last thing we want to do is see it change. But someone has to ask us how that can happen, otherwise we're all going to leave.
Can Sag Harbor be saved? I'm Karl Grossman reporting for WVVH-TV Hamptons Television. Thanks for watching.